Hey guys, Channel MST here. Today I'm going to be talking about chain links and the mechanics of chains and how they work and how they resolve and stuff like that. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to talk about what starts a chain and what doesn't start a chain. So for example, setting a monster, or setting a spell, or a trap, or setting a field spell does not start a chain. The normal summon of a monster does not start a chain either. If I were to attack with the monster, that does not start a chain either. So to re-summarize, setting a monster, setting a spell or trap or a field spell, those do not start chains. Okay, so now what starts chains is something like activating an effect. So if I summon to a guy and activate its effect when it's summoned, when it's normal summoned, then that effect starts a chain link, and that would be chain link 1. Activating a spell or trap. So if I were to activate a spell, that starts a chain link because you're activating a spell. Also, activating traps start chain links as well. So the activation of spells and traps, also the activation of a field spell, will all start chain links. If you activate a continuous spell or trap, that will also start a chain link. In addition to that, the activation of the effect, so if I, activate Royal Oppression, that starts a chain link. If I activate the effect of Royal Oppression later on after it has already been flipped, then that will also start a chain link. So, yeah. So that's how those kind of work. Some of them are continuous, so like Royal Decree, its an effect is continuous, so once it's activated, then its effect resolves and it just stays, so it doesn't trigger all the time. Also, for stuff like monsters with continuous effects, like Jinzo, his effect does not start a chain link. So if I go tribute for Jinzo, his effect will not, when he's summoned, his effect will not start a chain link because it's continuous. And since spells and traps activate, like Royal Decree will activate, and so it will start a chain link because it is a trap activating. But since his effect never activates, and he's a monster, and the summoning of a monster does not start a chain link, his effect will never activate. So I can summon him, and my opponent cannot chain bottomless because his effect just comes into play. Okay, here's the next example. Right now I'm going to be talking about costs and conditions, or I guess you could say requirements as well. So, for example, there are like requirements. For example, if monster is summoned, then I can activate Torrential Tribute. So some cards have requirements for them to be activated. So like for example, if I go Torrential Tribute and I have 2 monsters on the field, and then my opponent chooses not to respond to Torrential Tribute, then I can chain Starlight Road to my own Torrential Tribute because the requirement for Starlight Road has been met, which says that you can only activate this card when 2 or more cards you control are going to be destroyed. So once the requirement or condition has been met, you can activate a card. So there's cards like that where the condition has to be met in order for them to be activated. So those are those kind of cards. And it'll say, like it says, it'll be pretty specific. It'll say activate only when, or activate activate only when. These two, I guess, both have kind of like the same writing on them, but usually they'll say something similar to this, or it'll say, it'll be pretty obvious when it has a requirement. And there's also some stuff like conditions where this one, you cannot activate this card if multiple cards with the same effect are in that chain. So for example, if I activate, if I activate Torrential, and then I activate Starlight Road, and my opponent chains MST to target my Torrential, and then, for example, I chain my MST to destroy his other face down to see if he'll activate it in response. And then he does, and it's an MST, and he chains it, and he targets this. I cannot activate this in response to that because there's already 3 MSTs that are being played, so there'd be 3 cards that would all have the same name, so I wouldn't be able to activate that in response. And then there's also costs, so like if I activate Lightning Vortex, the cost to activate it is discarding a Jinzo. So before this card is even activated and put on, or starting a chain or put on the chain, the card in my hand is already in the graveyard. So that is a cost. And then there's stuff like resolution, like Dark Bribe. This has no cost. So at resolution, your opponent would draw the card, not when you activate it. So after this card resolves, after the chain is resolving and this card's on the chain, it resolves, then your opponent draws the card. Whereas Lightning Vortex, when it's put on the chain, this card's already in the graveyard. So, okay. And that's it for that. Okay, next we're going to talk about spell speeds and the timing of spell speeds and how they work. So to start off, there are spell speeds 1, 2, and 3. And spell speed 1 cards cannot be chained to spell speed 2 cards, and spell speed 2 cards cannot be chained to spell speed 3 cards. But the reverse is possible. So spell speed 1 cards can be chained to one another if they're triggered at the same time. Spell speed 2 cards can also be chained to spell speed 1 cards, and they can also be chained to other spell speed 2 cards. Spell speed 3 cards can be chained to spell speed 2 as well as spell speed 1, and they can also be chained to other spell speed 3 cards. Okay, so to start off, monsters are either going to be spell speed 1 or spell speed 2 effects, or going to have spell speed 1 or spell speed 2 effects. For example, Blacklisted Soldier's effect, to remove 1 monster on the field from play. This is an ignition effect, that is a spell speed 1 effect that can only be activated during your main phase 1 or main phase 2. The same with Tour Guide. Tour Guide's effect is a spell speed 1 effect that can be activated either during your main phase 1 or main phase 2. Max C is a spell speed 2 effect that can be activated during either player's turn. So this is kind of, you can kind of see that by it says activate during either player's turn. And then moving on to spells. Spells are going to be either spell speed 1 or spell speed 2. All spells are going to be spell speed 1 unless they have this this lightning bolt here as representing it's a quick play, or if it's a trigger, like a continuous card, it will trigger during either player's turn. But this spell speed, this means that this is a quick play, and so MST can be activated during either player's turn, whereas something like Lightning Vortex can only be activated during my main phase 1 or my main phase 2. Traps are all going to be spell speed 2, except for this type of trap. This trap has this little symbol here that has an arrow, and this means that this is a counter trap. And counter traps are the only spell speed 3 cards. There are no other spell speed 3 cards. So yeah, and so to summarize, monsters are spell speed 1 or 2, spells are spell speed 1 or 2, and traps are only spell speed 2 or 3, and counter traps are the only spell speed 3 cards. Okay, moving on. So for example, I cannot, if I summon my Blacklisted Soldier, if my opponent activates Torrential Tribute, I cannot activate Blacklisted Soldier's effect in response to that because he's only a spell speed 1, so I can't chain his effect and remove their Sengen from play. Also, if I summon Blacklisted Soldier and I choose to use this effect and target their Sengen and they chain Torrential, and if they chain Torrential and then I chain my Dark Bribe to negate their Torrential, this is spell speed 1, so they chain their spell speed 2, and then I chain my spell speed 3. They cannot chain a spell speed 2 card, so they cannot chain Effect Veiler and target my soldier, because Effect Veiler is a spell speed 2 effect. It can only be used during your during my main phase, but it's still a spell speed 2 card. But it cannot be chained to Dark Bribe because Dark Bribe is a spell speed 3 card. Okay, so then moving on, so that happens. Yeah, let's just clear the board here. So if I attack directly with Soldier and my opponent special summons Gores, I cannot discard Max C because during the damage step only certain cards can be activated, and that's also known. It'll tell you on cards, like I think the ruling for Max C says it cannot be activated during the damage step because of that. So yeah, so that's their example. That's an example there. Also, if for example, if I attack my opponent's Mystic Tomato, I cannot activate Max C if once it goes to the graveyard, if they choose to activate its effect, I cannot chain max C to its effect because max C cannot be activated during the damage step. Spell speed 3 cards can be activated during the damage step, and other cards that specify can also be activated during the damage step. So that's it for spell speeds and how they work in the timing of spell speeds. So yep. Okay, Channel MST signing off.